Good afternoon and welcome. I've got to welcome everybody to the last episode of our third binational webinar series. And we are ending this episode with a treat. So I'd like to thank those in attendance, as well as our partners that took on this endeavor, Greater Yuma Economic Development Corporation, Greater Yuma Port Authority, OPRODE from Ayuntamiento San Luis, Yuma County, and Forefront ED. So as always, we have got the Q&A box open for your questions and your answers. And I have the privilege of introducing you to Mr. Marcos Martinez O'Daly. Marcos is dedicated to fighting poverty and transforming cities. He has coordinated dozens of international events and legislative workshops with the Mexican Senate and some of the most recognized experts, mayors, legislators, urban planners, real estate developers, universities, and social organizations from around the world. That's just paragraph number one, you guys. So this is why I say you're in for a treat. So Marcos is a coordinator for the New Urban Law of Mexico, an advisor to Smart Cities Network and the Alliance for Central America with the Frederick Newman Foundation. It includes several cities located in Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Mexico for the exchange of best practices in smart cities. So Marco is also the founder of Green Spot, SA a social enterprise of tactical urbanism for the rescue of public spaces and the improvement of deteriorated neighborhoods. He's also founder of Smart City Lab, an urban laboratory for the promotion of social entrepreneurship in the state of Sonora. He is also a published author. Te digo, I'm going to keep going, man, I'm excited. Marco has two books. One is Ciudades Inteligentes, Manuales de Mejores Prácticas, translated to Smart Cities, Manual of Best Practices, y La Reforma Urbana para rescatar tu ciudad y cuidar tu planeta, translated to The Urban Reform to Rescue Your City and Take Care of the Planet. So we invited Marcos to join our regional venture to offer his perspective, obviously as an urban economist. GYDC, GYPA, Forefront ED, and OPRODE have all brought forth the series highlighting trade procedures, logistical routes, and currently infrastructure. So putting forth those key pieces of the mega regions puzzle, Marcos, we're calling on you to help viewers understand how they all fit and bring together economic prosperity in our region. So again, Marcos, thank you so much for joining us. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. I just wish I could keep going on your highlights and your life's work. It's a wonderful thing you're doing. So I'm excited to have you, and we're excited to hear what you've got to say. So with that, please, the floor is all yours, Marcos.
Thank you, Buna, and thank you to Forefront ED for the invitation. I feel like they sent you the long resume. We should have sent the short one, but now that you already read that one, if anyone wants to give me a job, please. I'm kidding. But yeah, thank you for reading that and for the kind introduction. What I would like to do first, and I'll try to talk a little bit about different topics than last time. So in the first or second series, you guys invited me to talk about smart cities specifically. We had that in Spanish, and so maybe some of the infrastructure related features of that will still be very relevant, but I'll try to apply a couple different things today focused on the infrastructure topic. And before that though, I will try to do a small or very, very short recap of the previous speakers and some of the main takeaways, at least related to what I'm going to talk about today. So I thought they were extraordinary conferences or webinars from the four previous speakers during this series, and each one of them dealing with some of the most important elements of infrastructure, so energy and water specifically. And so Daniel Ortega from APS was talking about the energy plans for the region. And for me, one of the main takeaways, the 100% clean energy by 2050, that's going to be a tremendous challenge. And I think that's something we can all begin to plan in our business models, and the amount of business opportunities that will create and the investments requirements that will create are quite interesting. something that was also mentioned, which I think is very important, and I just recently learned about this, on some demand curbing opportunities. And we often don't realize the kind of program some of these utility companies offer to reduce the consumption. So one of the main efforts for reducing our carbon footprint is not only substituting the current model of energy from oil to renewables, but the first thing we can do is to reduce our actual consumption. And so there are many kinds of technologies that allow us to do that, but that's also translated into savings for families and for businesses. And so I think that opportunity that they were offering, they had a program, they have, I think, several programs, but there was one where if you reduce your consumption between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m., you can get significant discounts on your utility bills. So that's very relevant for households and for businesses. And many of you for sure already apply these opportunities, but don't forget to check. I think especially for our immigrants who are learning to navigate the new opportunities from utility companies and the way they differ from those in Mexico, these will be very relevant. And the use, and I'll talk about a little bit more of how the demand curbing aspect of this will be a very, very big trend in the future of infrastructure. And I'll show you a presentation in a couple minutes, and then I'll talk a little bit more about that. And finally, the possibility of serving Mexico with some of these investments in renewable energies and energy of all types. And this will be a recurring topic with the other speakers as well, because Mexico is investing in energy production infrastructure, and the Arizona side of the mega region is investing in increased capacity for energy production. And this is a very, very unique opportunity that many other regions in the world don't have. And so you will have your risk reduced by 2, because now you have two countries investing in different infrastructure that can be connected. And so this will be a very, very important effort, especially as you move forward to renewables, because the main challenge with renewables is still the consistency. And so if there were certain statewide obligations to reduce the energy from traditional methods to renewables, and something happens in the future and you have the southern border or the partners in Mexico willing to mitigate that risk of the new technology, well, you have a big advantage over many others who don't have that kind of risk mitigation infrastructure. And so, Jorge Arce was sharing some of the infrastructure investments from the Mexican side, and some that were very well mentioned. First of all, that San Luis Rio Colorado was the beneficiary of the federal government's urban improvement program, which invested in at least 10 mega parks, basically, for the San Luis region, including the new stadium and a couple of main parks throughout the city. And so the improvement in public space from the city is something that was extraordinary for a 3-year period. Definitely, and that will be very, very useful, especially as we navigate the new challenges of COVID and the need for open space, right? And I actually had an opportunity to collaborate with that program. And then they shared the plans for the investments in the border crossing infrastructure that is expected to be completed within the next couple of years with a new state government, as they mentioned. And that includes a new freeway around the city, which will allow transportation of goods to go through in a faster way without blocking the city day-to-day operations. And his main topic was the energy plant that is being built, the gas plant in Mexico, which is a $300 million investment. That is worth noting, especially linked to what we were mentioning earlier about the US's plan to invest in renewables and how this partnership can be very, very safe for the region. And in that regards, Brittany Schmidt was also talking about the gas infrastructure on the Arizona side with Southwest Gas. Very, very interesting opportunities that they bring to the region, and how much of their pipeline is contracted to external contractors, and so that brings in new types of businesses to the region, but that also requires or brings new opportunities for local contractors. And finally, Jeremy McCall with water, and this will be the last point with this recap. Water, and I mean, some of the main takeaways: you have 2 water treatment plants, the Main Street Water Treatment Plant and the Agua Viva treatment plant in Yuma. And so that provides you with clean water. The capacity was pretty impressive. And you have the storage tank that allows for 10 million gallons a day water production. And so, but let's say from an eagle eye perspective, you have water. This is exceptional, and water will be one of the biggest challenges, both energy and water. But water is, especially for the Tijuana, Mexicali, Sonora, Baja, and also Arizona and California region, water is the issue right now. And so the way that the region, both the whole mega region on both sides of the border, has this reliability with water and clean water at that, this will provide a very strategic advantage for investments and for prospects for residential life as well. And so, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and how that actually translates into the future of infrastructure. So I'll share with you my screen now, and I'll go through some really quick ideas. All right, 1 second. All right, so infrastructure and the future opportunities for the mega region. So we heard what's going on with water and energy and gas infrastructure in both the Arizona and the Sonora side, or the US and Mexico side. And we, I mean, I think that's a big picture. Some of the new things that will be happening soon, and that's already trending around the world related to that infrastructure. So first, last time we talked about a new model, a new way of thinking about cities from this less car-oriented type of city to this more walkable, sustainable, green, public space oriented design. And I'm not going to talk much about that today, but that's still something that will keep popping up, and you'll see why. And so we were talking about energy. Okay, so the renewables and the future of energy and the way that the region is investing in it is noteworthy. But here, beyond just the actual production and the actual transition to renewables, the future of infrastructure will require a lot more of digitalization. And so we need to be able to connect through a big infrastructure or digital infrastructure, and integrate not just the actual solar panels and the wind turbines and the energy and the gas production energy, but we need to be able to digitalize the whole infrastructure so we know what's happening in real time in home consumption, and as we get more electric cars, transportation consumption, and with the actual damages or quality of the infrastructure. I think Brittany was mentioning how road improvement projects can damage a pipeline, for example. Well, we need to be able to digitalize that so that we don't guess where the damage is. We need to know this in real time. And so this is the Internet of Things. And I'm sure you've heard of this topic. The Internet of Things is precisely that. Our ability to put sensors on all these infrastructures that were more traditional and more basic. And so with the use of sensors, we can now evaluate in real time and use artificial intelligence to know all kinds of issues that are happening in our infrastructure, in our energy infrastructure, and our water infrastructure, and in our gas infrastructure. And you'll hear more about that in a little bit. And we can control all that through this. And so what used to be very, very complex systems can now be solved locally in incredibly efficient ways that very few regions and cities are doing. And so I think this is a trend that's already changing the whole infrastructure design. But I think it's something we can step up in many of these regions. And so, yeah, we were talking about the energy production from renewables and from the gas plant down in Mexico. Also, we were mentioning the idea of public space, the importance of public space. Let's not forget, this will still be a very, very key element. And so the fact that San Luis invested in very big public space, open space projects is definitely an advantage. But especially as we navigate forward after after COVID, I think this will still be a very relevant issue to keep on our radar. Okay, and so we were talking about water. And so with water technology and with the Internet of Things, as we were talking about earlier, I remember Jeremy mentioning how currently they already have certain systems. They have AMR systems, so they have an automatic meter reading that they just drive by a house and they can get the actual reading. But now this technology is transitioning, and so we see cities like New York now with sensors that allow the water consumption level to be communicated to the actual user each day, and it's actually 3 or 4 readings a day. So they get water reading consumptions in their phone to know when they have leaks, and so it's communicated to the city and it's communicated to them. And so, as we said in the beginning, both for energy and for water, curbing demand, the first thing we are seeing in the future of infrastructure is this ability to communicate to the consumer, to the user, in real time, what their actual consumption level is. And so much of the waste, both in water and in energy that we currently live, is due to the fact that we don't know how much we're consuming until the end of the month. And so this is radically changing now with the internet, with sensors, and with digital technology. And so this is what it's going to be. Now we're going to be able to monitor our whole consumption, not just for homes, but for businesses, for industrial parks, for neighborhoods. We're going to be able to monitor what's going on through our digital technology. And so this will help us make decisions in a much more efficient, and investments in a much more precise and smart method. And then with water and technology, we're going to start seeing new types of business practices, especially for agriculture. And so this will continue to change the way we see businesses. Oh, and I wanted to mention, so this is trash collection. And so with digital technology, with the Internet of Things, we can also recreate our trash recollection routes with a sort of Uber pool kind of technology, where instead of actually doing the whole route every day and picking up trash that might not be used or full or so it's also inefficient, and it's a waste of gas and a waste of manpower. So now we're going to be able to monitor how full each actual trash bin is, and personalize daily the most efficient, with the use of artificial intelligence, the most efficient routes, right? So this is the case of Guadalajara. Their effort on this issue has been still too new to tell, but it seems like it's working so far. So we're going to see a lot of digital opportunities as well. And so this is something that's also happening. We need to think of the virtual reality realm and the possibilities that that's creating for infrastructure. And so something we're seeing right now is one of the challenges with investments, with projections for utility companies and for water companies when it comes to investments, is that we need to try to guess or evaluate, and it's normally a slow process, how much capacity the infrastructure actually has before we can approve, especially big projects. And so, but now we're seeing new technology that allows us to recreate our whole infrastructure digitally and make projections in real time. And so this actually allows even investors to come in and read the amount of capacity that each area of the city has before they even talk to the city. And so this kind of technology, I know one with Gridix, it's based off of Florida. They're already doing this. And so they're digitalizing the infrastructure. And I think this is a very important step. And you'll see this being mentioned often. A lot of what we're talking about is internet. So one of the main questions is, what is the city of Yuma's or the mega region or San Luis's business plan around internet? And so often we depend on private sector and private investments, but many of the technologies that we require now, starting with fiber optics and the best type of wiring and best type of connections, require a very ambitious plan. And so some cities and some regions are partnering with the private sector to bring in the latest in internet technology. And so the more digital we become, the more the world starts heading towards these Internet of Things, sensors, digital industries that have a wider margin profit. The more we're going to need to compete with actual quality infrastructure on internet. And so this is something that we also need to keep in sight. This brings me to the post-COVID challenge of hospitals. And so with COVID, something that has been forgotten in the conversation, because we've been very focused on short and midterm survival, which is logical. But in the long term, beyond just defeating this one virus, we might actually have to face new viruses in the future, including this one. And one of the basic requirements for this will be medical infrastructure. And so we can take two routes. We can take first, we need more beds, more ER beds, more actual hospital beds, which especially on our southern border partners is going to be lagging significantly from our northern partners. But we also need to come up with creative alternatives. And so we have the Johns Hopkins model of hybrid actual hospital beds and technology that allows hospitals to send patients home and use their own home as actual beds with certain kind of equipment and technology. And so this is the Johns Hopkins model is something worth analyzing for medical infrastructure. And so again, I keep mentioning the digital economy that will keep popping up. Oh, and this one is actually important. We mentioned it last time, but this I think is becoming more and more important with highly automated cars and eventually self-driving cars. But for now, it's highly automated cars. What we're starting to see is people are willing to travel longer distances because now they can work or sleep. Not yet, but soon. Some are, they shouldn't. But people are willing to drive longer and longer distances. And so this requires certain car-oriented infrastructure that will be very, very important. But this also means that if people are willing to travel 2 or 3 hours, especially with work from home options that many of us have now, we could actually only drive to the office once or twice a week. So this means that the mega region, which seems to be a bit far from the San Diego, Tijuana, Los Angeles mega region, well, now it's in driving distance from this new mode of transportation. And so you are now a very, very attractive location for housing, especially with the current housing market being what it is in California, right? And in many places in Mexico as well. And so this will create very, very big infrastructure demand beyond what is imagined by many current scenarios. And then with what we're talking about with the internet technology, even if we don't have the highest or the best infrastructure for internet yet, especially in some remote regions or the smaller villages in our region, in our mega region, we now have satellite technology. And so we see this with the new Tesla and Elon Musk infrastructure from satellite internet. It's incredibly fast. And so this is also increasing the speed to which we're transitioning towards further away from the big cities and more towards the mid-sized cities and smaller villages. And so we're seeing this. We're seeing suburbs and small communities that are looking to run away from the hassle of those big cities, right? So I'll just go through a couple of last ones. We've already talked about these, the 3D printing and what that's going to do to the whole industry, the traditional industry. We're seeing all kinds of products being printed at home or in local print shops at first. And so this will really challenge the traditional logistical infrastructure that was required, that was very costly, that required long distances, timing, big warehouses. And so just let's not keep this off our radars yet. And how virtual reality and work from home and all these digital technologies are allowing us to do. Again, this is important to mention, just because you will become a very big destination for cities that are too expensive or don't have water or don't have the adequate resources to house or receive all these investments in the future. And then we were talking about, I heard, I think Jorge mention industrial parks. Well, the future of industrial parks are special economic zones 4.0 or 5.0 that are based around technology and internet. And so now we're not needing the logistical aspect of it or the national fiscal exemption aspects of it. Now a city can create its own special economic zone with the right infrastructure and software. And so this creates a very, very big opportunities for traditionally industrial zones to begin the process towards a more digital industry. And again, as always, I just need to keep it up, bring it up, is public space. Public space will always be what sets apart the infrastructure of a city from other cities, because that's what talent, that's what workers, that's what households are looking for. They're looking for infrastructure, not just that works, and let's say in this case, and I'm sorry to bully Tijuana, but beyond just moving water and wastewater, we need to be thinking of actual places where we can enjoy our city, our infrastructure, our spaces with things that are hybrid between its function and actual recreation and architecture and beauty, right? And so, yeah, I'll just skip some of these so we can get to some questions and answers maybe. But that's the recap of the infrastructure for the region and some things to keep in sight with what's happening in the world and where actual infrastructure is headed.
Wow. Well, I hope that at least our attendees and our panelists can say they've had their mind blown about 6 or 7 times in between all of your posts or your points, I'm sorry. That was phenomenal, Marco, because of the fact that you can intertwine the macro and the micro and just know that even though we had focused on industry and logistics, at the end of the day, it's powered by people, right? And you have to have that perfect formula of living, working, and playing right where exactly you want to live. Not saying that, we're going to have a high walkability score, especially somewhere in Yuma, Arizona, where it's 120 in July. Where do you want to walk to? I don't even want to walk to my car sometimes from my house. So with the mere fact that public spaces obviously plays a big role, would you be willing to expand a little bit? I know that you had a project going on with San Luis, Mexico. Would you be able to tell us exactly what investment they did in their public spaces for the betterment of the community?
Yeah, so the federal government's urban improvement program is a public space redevelopment program, and they chose last year San Luis as one of the recipients. It was 10 cities in Mexico, or it was 10 different border cities, I think, 20 in total in Mexico, something around there. And they had several strategic parks and some street redevelopments, some different kinds of projects, but it was all public space, basically. And with San Luis, what this program decided to invest is several mega parks and the stadium, basically. And so now they have a brand new stadium that was built with that program. And then the parks, I was specifically working with the community around the stadium, and then around the Gabriela. There's 3 parks. It was Parque Tortuga, it was Parque Gabriela. I forget the full name, but it's a community park. It's very interesting. It's right in the middle of traditional tianguis that used to set up in an old rundown park, and it was a quite dangerous neighborhood historically. And so now with this revival of the region, it really changed the dynamic. And so those were the 3 main projects I was working with the community around during the construction. But it was a total of 10 different projects. And so I think that was quite an impressive investment from the federal government.
Right, wonderful. No, I mean, and it's good to see, our Southern partners, that they're actually investing in the betterment of the community as well. Can we go back to when you had kind of explained the demand curve? So obviously talking about, carbon footprint, let's just, I know we can talk about water, we can talk about gas, but in this aspect, let's talk about electricity, reducing our overall consumption, but then we're still looking to increase our overall supply because there's still an overall demand. That goes back, Marcos, I mean, we can trigger it to people are living significantly longer today than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. So the mere fact that we need to continue an escalation, because it's an escalation in population, it's an escalation of use, but then at the same time, be fiscally responsible. I mean, if we can monitor anything from our smartwatches, right, that like do our pulse on ours, and we were given that technology. So give us a little bit kind of in more depth as to what the demand curve you think is going to look like from here to maybe 10, 20 years out, and what we can do to be fiscally responsible to ensure that it doesn't, kind of overbear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as soon as we begin to measure it, and as you said, I think that was the perfect example with the smartwatch, right? So now you're evaluating your own body, and as soon as you start evaluating your pulse, your blood pressure, your calories, all these things, one starts to regulate our behavior daily. And the watch reminds us, like, each day is like, oh, so now it's time for lunch. So the same thing is going to happen with houses. As soon as we begin evaluating our actual consumption, we're going to be able to modify our behavior. And number 2, we all want to spend less. So even if we are not worried about environment, we still don't want to give away money that we could be saving. And so once we start reading our energy consumption and our water consumption, but especially our energy consumption in real time, we're going to be able to change behaviors in the same smartwatch metaphor. But not just change behaviors, but now we can also turn off lights from our phone. And so this new technology will allow us to do things that we weren't able to do before. So if we leave out of town and we're on vacation, we will be notified that there are lights on during the daytime. And so you could be in the beach and you can actually turn your lights off. And so this curbing the demand part will be natural, because now we have the technology to actually do it, to evaluate and to modify it at no significant cost, really. And so we already have some hybrid technology that we can put in our own homes. We could, our plugs or the wiring, we could already try to do it ourselves. There's online technology for $60, $70 that allows you to do some of these things already. But eventually it will just be standard practice in household design. So I think that will be very important. And yes, we might create new industries that require more energy. And so I think it's smart to have more capacity for energy, but not enough cities are communicating this to small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and households, how much they could already be saving and reducing that carbon footprint with what we already have available today, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. And have another question that came in, just a second. So Yuma County is qualified as rural, but we are not as rural as shows in the previous presentation. So how do we change that? We're not a Phoenix, right? Phoenix is just as hot. But you know, we're not a Scottsdale, but I mean, we have water, right? Like I shouldn't say that too loud. So how would we you know, how do we kind of change that narrative to where, you know, rural has kind of a negative connotation? Obviously with what you've seen and what you've studied, we're not kind of down on the totem pole. So you know, can you highlight on that?
Yeah, no, Yuma and the mega region in general is by far a rural region. Even though I would say right now, rural can be an advantage. And so before you rebrand yourself as a cosmopolitan or a mega city, I think it's something is very useful to know right now, that a lot of people after COVID don't want to go back to the trauma of big cities. And so New York, LA, San Francisco, all these cities lost a lot of people to home office, basically. People who could, in industries who could work from home, are going back to smaller towns and mid-sized cities. I think mid-sized cities will be the future of cities in general. The density of a medium-sized city and the cost of living in a medium-sized city is significantly more attractive than big cities. The problem is that big cities still offer some very important things that medium-sized and small-sized cities don't, which is entertainment, it's diversity, it's community, it's things that we can really quickly fix in our mid-sized or small cities. And so I think it's the right time to have that reflection. What can we add to our already significant offer of urban offer, right? And I know the Yuma area, I mean, Nasser took me to extraordinary experience walking through downtown, through the old downtown, and the food scene, the entertainment scene, the walkability. I mean, even though you say it's really hot, well, at nighttime, you have one of the best weathers in the world right now. And so I wish I was there at night and not in Nogales at night, which is freezing. Yeah, so these are all things that we can shift to compete with bigger cities. But I just say, let's be careful not to rebrand in something that is not trending right now, right?
Understood. Thank you. We do have a question from Hector Tapia. He is the economic development for the city of San Luis. So he asked, Marco, the type of future of city planning and the use of creativity are sometimes limited to outdated zoning ordinances. Any ideas on how to push for new ideas on the use of zoning restrictions? Yeah,
I think if possible, form-based codes, zoning methods are very interesting because they will help navigate or transition in communities that might be resistant to mixed uses and to higher densities. And so if we are able to regulate, so form-based codes are a type of zoning that, instead of regulating the actual use, will regulate the architecture or the exterior, just to make sure that whatever is built is integrated in a visually compatible way with the neighborhood, right? And I think that's not new. That's been quite old. But then something that is really interesting right now with the lean urbanism movement in the United States, they have these things they call pink zones. And so lean urbanism in general is worth exploring, and they have several great tools on how to change zoning methods in tough situations like most U.S. cities do. And so it's a harder conversation. I mean, if we talk about mixed use planning and walkable cities down in Sonora or Baja, it's a whole different thing. But Arizona and California, zoning is a complicated issue. And so with lean urbanism, they're coming up with great strategies that are actually working specific to the U.S. legal challenges. And pink zones are areas where you explore new possibilities that before actually adopting a citywide zoning reform. And so you can start with, they call pink zones, or actual districts or neighborhoods where you will be able to take away some of the traditional zoning regulations in order to create examples. And so once the positive example is built, now the conversation with the community might be easier.
Wonderful. Gosh, that is wonderful. And then there was Hector with the city of Somerton. I apologize, Mr. Tapia. Thank you for that. And so I don't have any more questions that have come through. So with that, I want to again just say thank you so much for highlighting again the micro and the macro aspect, the mere fact that, you know, people run everything behind it. Water, power. I will say that Yuma County is spearheading a regional broadband project because we need that connectivity. And when you had spoken about the digitalization, and integration, we're seeing that with the broadband. You know, person A needs to know what person's B got. At the end of the day, it's going to be for the regional benefit. So we thank, you know, Yuma County for being able to spearhead that and bring forth more communication, you know, on the fact of public safety and for sheer convenience, you know, because nobody likes a lagging internet connection at the end of the day. Marcos, your information has been invaluable. We will definitely post links to your book that I assume are on sale for you. And then this will be available on YouTube for anybody to share as well. We like to, again, thank you so much, Marcos, for your time, for your insight, for everybody that had attended. This was the sweet treat that we're leaving you with at the end, a lot to really kind of delve into. And, you know, the mere fact that the Yuma and the Mega region has a lot to offer. It has a lot to offer to industry. It has a lot to offer to individuals. And we're just more than happy that we were selected to kind of highlight that to everybody. So outside of that, thank you so much. Everybody enjoy your weekend, stay safe. And again, Marcos, truly indebted to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.